want this type of stuff on your browser even.
Yeah, I think the thing with the choice of Flash and Silverlight, I understand the reason why webmasters use Flash. I don't myself, but I do understand why they do. The choice of Silverlight seems to be an intentional, almost a political decision. It seems to be some connection, or it appears, everyone I've seen appears to have some connection to Microsoft, either sponsored by Microsoft or Microsoft's one of their major advertisers or a partner, Microsoft partner. There seems to be some financial something in there to make them decide to go with something that's not necessarily great at what it does, but it's something that favours another company. You know, the Flash is the sort of default, the de facto standard at the moment, although that seems to be changing quicker. I mean, the big sites like YouTube, once they go 100% HTML5, the better. That will draw people away from the idea that they need Flash, and other sites will follow suit.
Yeah, completely agree, and I think
Remember Soapbox? Microsoft had a site called Soapbox, and I think that used Silverlight as well. Unless they had an option, I'm not sure if they used that. I know actually it's funny because now you have this really big graveyard of those sites that used Miguel de Casa likes to brag about all these interviews which are encoded strictly in Silverlight objects. People will not install the plugin very soon. It won't be even available for downloads. And all these sites that have an object, I don't even know what the extension is for Silverlight object, but every site that has these objects will just be completely just presenting you a binary that's not accessible within a few years. And this possibly includes some parts of Microsoft's website. Although lots of people made fun of Microsoft because even while they were trying to sell as a substitute to Flash, they were trying to sell you Silverlight, they had lots of pages in Microsoft website which were using strictly just Flash.
Well, it'll be interesting to see what 2011 brings, and I think sites like YouTube will be the trendsetters, rightly or wrongly, for whichever direction we're going to be going. And with that in mind, have you got another topic, Roy, on your list before I skip on one of mine? Anything, or Gordon? Have you got anything that you want to bring up?
I have one actually. This is another new audiocast, and I only discovered this from someone on Identica. I don't know if it was Laurel or the Mad Hatter, Wayne, his name is. It was I think it was one of those two. It's a Canadian site, it's a Canadian podcast. It's called the Search Engine Podcast, or Audiocast even. And for a site called the Search Engine, the link for the audiocast is horrendous. So I'm just going to put it in the show notes. It's tvo.org. We'll put the link in the show notes. And I only discovered these through a link in Identica. And I've been listening to one. I've actually got it paused while we're recording this. It's a lot of sort of political stuff. The latest episode is called Byron Son. It's still in prison. The one before that is called Is the War Against WikiLeaks a War Against the Internet? Then you've got How WikiLeaks Hacked the News. So why can't we all be more like Wikipedia? So that's a sort of gives you an idea of the type of content. And so far, I've only listened to half of one episode, and I'm very impressed. So this is a recommended audiocast called Search Engine with Jesse Brown.
And as you were speaking, I've already put it in the show notes and it's ready to be published. So the link is there already for anybody that would like to listen to it. And if it's a recommendation from Gordon, then it's going to be a good one. So I strongly recommend you get over to that link. Roy, anything else you want to bring up before we move on to our final topics? We've got a little bit of a unique section coming up, which I think you've got the heads up on. So before we do that, anything else you would like to bring up? And
I'm really hoping in a future show, and it might actually take a long time to do, it's worth talking about what happens to the kind of the new Novell, and I put it in brackets. It's not going to be called the new Novell, but Novell has been acquired, and it's probably going to go private, but it keeps the same name. What happens now is it has ramifications for OpenSUSE sites. It's got lots to do with the patents that Novell sold, the SCO case, and all kinds of complications. I think it's a really major issue, and I think it's underreported in general by all sorts of sites, because Novell is not really just a Linux company. It does lots of proprietary software. But what just happened was the sale of, I think, about 860 or so patents to a consortium funded, run by Microsoft. That's a lot of patents. Lots of these patents have something to do, apparently, with Linux and Unix, which is troubling. And lots of companies have, or lots of organizations even, have joined the Open Inventions Network since then. The reason is they need some kind of defense, because it is kind of assumed that Microsoft will try to pressure companies into signing a deal to do with patents, mostly things to do with the Linux system, things which were patented by Novell employees who thought at the time that they were trying to help Novell and trying to make the Open Inventions Network stronger. What they actually did, and I denounced them at the time, saying these patents will probably be sold, or these patents are owned by Novell, they're not owned by you, and you don't decide what happens to them. But these patents that they wrote are not being used obviously against Linux, because of the companies they were being passed to. Companies that actually sue Linux companies or Linux phones like Android. Companies like Apple also sue Android or Google using patents which they claim infringed by Android. All these things are quite troubling. It actually shows you how the patent battle is being elevated as the platform to wage war on. Not things like how many features you have, because of course if you're a company that wants to sell a phone to compete against the iPhone, but they tell you, well, you cannot have any touchscreen or you cannot have multi-touch, then you lose a feature just because of patents, even though you know how to implement this and it's pretty trivial. I foresee patents being a very major issue in years to come, and I've been covering them since 2006 at least as a major obstacle. It's, like I said before, very few people talk about that.
There's one thing that I saw the other day about the ownership of Unix. That it was basically saying that when it was discovered that Novell, in the SCO case, when it was discovered that Novell are the actual owners of Unix, and they've also discovered through SCO's failures, repeated failures, that there is no Unix code in Linux now, because SCO tried for a long time and multiple times to try and prove that, and they failed miserably every time. That the ownership of the Unix trademarks and copyrights and all that going to potentially to a group that Microsoft are part of isn't an issue for Linux, because Linux is a totally separate thing now. And I never thought about that until it was pointed out, and I was like, yeah, it's probably right. But then again, I mean, companies that have more lawyers than engineers, you never know what kind of fairy tales that they can manage to write and convince judges are true.
Well, thank you very much, Gordon, because you've introduced two of my final topics very, very nicely. First of all, about fairy tales. I'm not going to dwell on this very long on this particular TechBytes show, because I'm going to be writing an article on it and I'm going to be looking at it in more depth. Recently I wrote another article on Windows Phone 7 and Connect, and I often attract comments which sometimes can be quite derogatory to myself for no apparent reason other than the person who's writing doesn't agree with what I say. Now that's fine, but normally when people don't agree with what each other say, you expect a debate, not an insult. However, this particular commenter was quite interesting, that made a remark on my site. He came on with the usual claims of showing Windows Phone 7 to a friend and how a friend was amazed, and a story that any of us can recount about any mobile platform that we want, and is completely unprovable. What happened then, at the same time that this comment appeared on my site, was that a tweet was sent to me with just 2 simple words. Well, it was actually 3, but one was more of an expression. And it was the following. It said, "Burp, Linux sucks." And it was by the person of the same name on Twitter as the